following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Thank you, Tally Olson. We are back talking vintage sports in the zone. I'm Ralph Tycho of the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, and this is a tough one for all of us. The four mavens are here, mavens of the times. Alan Blumkin, how are you?
Hanging in there.
Good. George Case the third.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, George. David Hubler.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. And Hal Bock, a fellow New York Giant fan. We're both saddened by the passing of Johnny Antonelli. And I wanted to start with you, Hal, if you could lead the roundtable and you guys talk about your memories of Johnny Antonelli in whatever context it takes you. Hal Bock.
Well, my recollection of Johnny Antonelli, he was a terrific left-handed pitcher. Came up with the Braves as a bonus baby. Was with the Braves for a couple of years. And the Giants made a trade which shook everybody to their core because they traded Bobby Thompson, the man who hit the shot heard around the world, the home run that won the 1951 pennant for the Giants. They traded him along with a catcher named Sam Calderon to the Milwaukee Braves to get Johnny Antonelli, Don Little, and an infielder named Billy Klaus. Now, Don Little was a useful pitcher, pretty good left-handed relief pitcher. But Johnny Antonelli became the star of that deal because he won 21 games in 1954 when the Giants won the pennant, and he was a terrific addition to that team. He gave them an ace, really, a left-handed pitcher, a very stylish pitcher, and he was an ace on that staff and led them to a pennant in 1954. Also won a couple of games in the World Series, one game in the World Series, the opening game, and he also came in relief and finished off the sweep in the fourth game. So he was a very important part of that 1954 Giant championship. And to have traded Bobby Thompson, that was a gut shot for Giant fans at that time because, after all, Bobby had hit the home run, the most memorable home run in Giant history, and they were shuttling him off to Milwaukee. They'd better get something good in return, and boy, did they ever. They got a quality pitcher who one of the best in the National League. And I'm curious about the memories of some of you other guys of Johnny Antonelli. I know David has a very wonderful story about Johnny. David, could you pitch in?
Yeah. When you're kids and you have any contact with a major league ball player, it's like a day in heaven. I mean, you just don't forget it forever, ever. And here I am, how many years later, how many decades later, and this story is still fresh in my mind. It must have been, it definitely was an afternoon game at the Polo Grounds. And I don't remember who they were playing, but occasionally I used to sort of cut school, high school, and that's probably why I never got into Yale. But anyway, I went to the Polo Grounds, I guess with a friend of mine, and there was virtually no one there. And in those days, you could walk down to the gate, to the railing in front of the box seats, and just watch guys warm up. The starting pitcher didn't necessarily warm up in a bullpen, and you could hear them. That's how I got my other story with the Yankee catcher. But anyway, so I was standing there, and I had my glove, as all kids do when they go to the ballpark, and Johnny Antonelli was warming up. and I was watching him. And I said a couple of times, I said, "Hey, Johnny, throw me a ball. Throw me a ball." Well, I didn't expect anything. So he stopped as he was warming up, and he said, "I'll throw it to you if you promise you'll throw it back." And, I was sort of stunned by that remark. And in my mind, I'm saying, I better catch it if he throws it. So, because there were other kids standing around, too. And so he threw me the ball, and I tossed it back to him. And I caught it on a fly, and he caught it on a fly. And it was like, we had a little catch going there for ourselves. Just one pitch. I kept my promise to him, and I'll never forget that story. I don't even remember whether he won the game or not, but I enjoyed the rest of that afternoon, boy.
Can I say a few words?
That's the kind of moment that lives on in your memory, of course.
That's right. And I wish more major leaguers would keep that in mind when they have contacts with kids, and try whenever they can to, even if they're in a bad mood, just try to be somewhat pleasant, because those kids are never going to forget that.
Well, that's the wonderful, David, that's the wonderful part of spring training, because there is much more access to the players and much more opportunity to interact with the players and to say, "Hey, Johnny, how you doing today?" And you're 100% right, because that builds a relationship that lives on, and then those kids become adults, and they become lifelong fans of you and your team.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the game has changed. George knows that.
Absolutely. I echo everything you just said, Hal. And David, I don't want to jump in here because you're telling a wonderful story, but I can tell you the access to the players is nowhere near what it used to be.
No,
and now they've got time set aside that you can go in and go down and get an autograph or a picture day or something like that. In an earlier time, the players were there, and if a kid like you, David, they asked to throw him a ball, and if the player wanted to throw him a ball, they'll do it. And I've seen other footage of guys, ball players having catches with kids, and that's the beauty of baseball. And what I think a lot of it has gone by the wayside, because today, you just don't have the access, and the kids are not as much into baseball as they used to be. It's a totally different world. So I really enjoyed your little story, David, and how your comments absolutely right on as far as I'm concerned.
A little. Wait a second. I want to just tell a little sidebar for this story.
Yeah, go ahead.
In talking about contact with the ball players, one of the great things about the Polo Grounds was that the Giants had an open parking lot for the players, and to make it even more easily to get in touch with these guys, most of the Giants had New York State plates with their uniform numbers on them, so you could actually walk into that parking lot, which you can't do. And you can, there's 24. Well, I'll wait for Willie to come out. And you could do that, and they did come out and talk to you. I remember having conversations with Sal Magley's wife, waiting for him to come out. And that doesn't happen anymore.
No, that stuff is, those places are off limits. Their
Sure.
cars are far away from the public, I'll tell you. But what I was going to say is there's still one player that I know of who has occasionally had a catch with a kid, and that's Aaron Judge of the Yankees.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up, yeah.
I've seen footage of him having a catch with a kid, which I thought was great, but that may be part of the fact that he's a young guy. He's not jaded, even though he's been very successful in his career, and he understands a little better than many of these players the relationship that you can create with the fans with a simple case of having a catch.
I guarantee you that if that kid lives to be 95, he will remember that, and he'll tell his grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Yep.
which I'm sure you've done with your grandchildren.
Well, the daughters, they don't know. The girls.
What do they know?
What do they know?
Can I say a few words about Antonelli?
Sure.
Okay. I first discovered him like on a baseball card, 1952, 52 Topps card. And basically, what I found out is that he signed for $65,000 with the Boston Braves in 1948. And in those days, they had to keep them on the roster. And several of the ball players, the Braves ball players, hated Johnny Antonelli because of the bonus.
They resented him?
They resented him like you wouldn't believe. The biggest one was Johnny Sane.
Oh, yeah.
And he said if they could pay this kid $65,000, and I have to scrape for a couple $1,000, and he went up to their offices and screamed bloody murder. This is probably one of the reasons that they unloaded him to the Yankees in 1951. But Antonelli was not the only one. He had a partner in crime who's still around named Del Crandall.
Yeah, he played with Milwaukee, didn't he?
Yeah. Johnny Antonelli and Del Crandall went into the military together. He missed 51 and 52. Both of them came out the first year the Braves were in Milwaukee. And Johnny Antonelli was 12 and 12. He was part of the regular rotation there. But as Hal mentioned, they after that season they traded him to the Giants for essentially for Bobby Thompson, who would go on to break his ankle in spring training and get replaced by some kid named Henry Aaron. So anyway, Antonelli in 1954 led the National League in winning percentage. He led the National League ERA, and probably had they had a Cy Young award in each league back then, he would have won the National League Cy Young award, beating out Warren Spahn and Robert Roberts that year.
He was a high-quality pitcher.
Yeah,
he
he also won 20 games in 1956 for a team that was in sixth place. And then when the Giants moved west in 1958, the only two players that they really took with them were Johnny Antonelli and Willie Mays. And Antonelli had another big year in 1959, but he had won 19 games either by early September or before September. He could never get that 20th.
Didn't Antonelli have some kind of a problem with the fans in California?
Oh, yeah.
What was that all about?
I don't know, but they resented anybody who had the New York Giant uniform.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay,
they somehow found a way to embrace Willie Mays, didn't they?
Later on, because Mays was the first couple of years there, he was second banana to Cepeda, Orlando Cepeda there, because Cepeda was one of their own.
Like Willie McCovey.
Yeah. And they, anybody who came from New York, they didn't like very much. But basically, the only two were, Bill White was a third, but they traded him after the season. Were Mays and Antonelli. Now somehow in 1960, when he came back, his arm went.
But what's interesting? What you say about the resentment to New York, the ballpark where the Giants play, and I for the life of me, I couldn't tell you the name of it because it's gone through 3 or 4 corporate names. But that ballpark has a section in the press area which is dedicated to the memory of the New York Giants, and it celebrates John McGraw and it celebrates Bobby Thompson's home run and all of that stuff. So that's pretty nice on the part of the Giants.
Well, it took a long time for them to get to that point.
Yeah, well, it took a long time for the Mets to figure out that they needed a Mets Hall of Fame. Sometimes they're a little dense, these corporate heads of ball clubs.
Anyway, with Antonelli, he went 6-7 with a high ERA in 1960, And after that season, the Giants traded him and Willie Kirkland, the outfielder, to the Indians for Harvey Keene. And Antonelli pitched some with the Indians very, very ineffectively, and they released him. This is in 1961. And he went back to the Braves for a couple of games, and they just didn't have it anymore. He actually tried out for the Mets. He went to their spring training in 1962, but he just didn't have it anymore. He quit, and he wound up building an incredibly lucrative tire business out of his hometown of Rochester.
In Rochester, yeah.
And he turned, I think, one store into a couple of hundred stores, and he was very, very successful as a businessman. And he's beloved by the people in Rochester.
My impression is that he was a nice guy, a genuinely nice person, you know?
I have a book of his that he put out, a small book a number of years ago called A Baseball Memoir. And he discusses his whole career and everything like that. And the book is, it's brief, but it's very, very good. You could probably get it off Amazon for a few bucks.
But, that's a blockbuster trade when you think about it.
Oh, yeah.
That kind of trade, they don't make trades like that anymore.
Well, there's no free agency back then.
That's true. But to trade an icon, Bobby Thompson was an icon after he hit that home run. And to package him and send him off to Milwaukee, and they were gambling because, as you said, Antonelli was coming off a 12-12 season. That's mediocre.
Also, one of the reasons I think they got rid of Bobby Thompson was Willie Mays was coming back from the Army.
Well, that's true. Yeah, 1954. You're right. But don't forget, Bobby was playing third base after they moved him from the outfield. DeRocher shuffled the outfield to make room for Mays, and then moved Marty Irvin from first base to left field, and Whitey Lockman from left field to first base. So Leo was shaking that team up pretty good.
Yeah, Bobby Thompson broke his ankle in the spring training with Milwaukee, and they brought up this kid from Class A ball named Henry Aaron.
He did pretty well, didn't he?
Yeah, and what's ironic about Bobby Thompson is that he was playing center field in 1951 and was replaced there by Willie Mays because Bobby Thompson wasn't hitting. And then when Hank Thompson developed some personal problems, Bobby was moved into third base. So Bobby Thompson was replaced by Willie Mays and Henry Aaron. That's a pretty good exactly.
Thompson came back to the Giants at the end of his career, didn't he?
He came back in '57 when they sent Shanings, but right before over the winter of '58, they got rid of Bobby Thompson, they got rid of Don Mueller, and they got rid of Whitey Lockman, who they'd gotten back from the Cardinals for Hoyt Wilhelm, and they got rid of all of them because they didn't want these guys who they thought were over the hill to come out west with them.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Is Stoneham still running the club then?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I didn't remember that.
And you know the great story about Chub Feeney. Chub Feeney was, I guess, the executive vice president of the Giants, or whatever title you wanted to give him. And when they were talking about moving to California, Feeney went out to scout the ballpark, Candlestick Park. And he went out there at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and it was beautiful. Nice, and no problem with the weather or anything. Everything was perfect. And he said, well, we can do this. That's fine. That what he didn't know was at night the winds came in off the bay, and it blew Stu Miller off the mound in an All-Star game. It was so windy out there. But Chub Feeney didn't realize that they played the games at night, not in the daytime, most of the games. So.
Yeah, I have a book on the came out a number of years ago on the 1958 Giants, the first year in San Francisco, and the author managed to interview almost everybody, including Willie Mays, and they basically all said that they would have been better off double-decking Seal Stadium.
Well, they played in Seal Stadium that first year, didn't they?
2 years.
2 years, okay.
Yeah.
And the Dodgers were playing in the Coliseum.
Yeah.
Wally Moon was hitting 250-foot home runs, right?
Yeah, right.
And the Giants made a pennant race out of it in 1959. They came in a narrow third behind the Dodgers and Braves. And
there was a great playoff. Speaking of the Giants and Dodgers and moving to California, there was a great playoff series in '62, which mirrored the 1951 playoff series.
Oh, yeah.
It was just remarkable the way it played out.
The Giants got 4 runs in the top of the ninth of the third game, but there's no home run. They got it on walks and errors and a bunch of plays like that. They got 4 runs. The Dodgers just collapsed. And they won the
World Series against the Yankees.
Yeah.
It's a long time ago.
Oh, yeah.
I wanted to get back, David. You told the story at the beginning about Antonelli and the 50. And then I thought we could talk about that 54 World Series. Alan and Hal and David. That's my memory of that series because my dad playing in the American League. He played with the Indians in '46, and some of those Indians players played the 54 team. And that was just a huge upset because the Indians had won 111 games during the regular season, and they had probably one of the greatest pitching staffs in the history of baseball. And yet they get to the Polo Grounds, and the first 2 games they get beat. Dusty Rhodes hits 2 pop-up home runs. Willie Mays makes the catch in center field off of Vic Wirtz, 430 feet or whatever it was for an out. And all of a sudden, the Giants are ahead 2-0. They go to Cleveland. Giants finish them off. That pitching staff was incredible, Alan, as you'll recall.
Yeah.
I mean, they had Feller who was winding down, but they had Bob Lemon and Early Wynn and Mike Garcia and Hal Newhouser. Newhouser, Wynn, and Lemon were all future Hall of Famers. And then Art Hudeman, he came in as their number 5 starter, I think it was, and he won like 15 games. And then
Johnny Antonelli Antonelli started the game too.
Yeah,
and
he did.
Al
and
Smith
he won it.
Al Smith, who was the leadoff batter for the Indians,
hit
a home run to make it 1-0, and that was all they got off Antonelli.
Yeah, it was incredible. And then, as Hal said, I mean, he got a save in that. I think it was the 4th game. He was credited with a save. So, I mean, the pitching staff, when you looked at it, man to man, didn't compare to the Indians. But on the other hand, the bottom line was the Indians got swept by the Giants in that 54 series. Yeah,
I have a book that was written by Alvin Dark a bunch of years ago called "When in Doubt, Fire the Manager." I got him to autograph it at a card show that I went to a number of years later. And the Giants used to barnstorm east with the Indians because they were the only 2 teams training in Arizona at that point.
Right.
So they played about 20 exhibition games against each other. And Alvin Dark said 3 things. None of the starters on the Indians were left-handed. They were not particularly good defensively, and they were very slow.
My favorite story from that World Series, when Mays made that great catch, in those days, relief pitchers were allowed to pitch to 1 batter. Now, of course, we have to pitch to 3 batters, but that's another story for another day. DeRocha brought in Don Little, who came to the Giants in that Antonelli trade, brought in Don Little to face Vic Wirtz, who was a left-handed pitcher, left-handed hitter. And, of course, Wirtz hit the ball 9 miles. I mean, it just kept going. And Mays kept going, and Willie made that fantastic catch. I asked Willie about that catch And he said it wasn't that tough because it was like when I played football. It was like a wide receiver. And I thought that's a great story. I never heard that before. Anyway, Mays makes the catch, and DeRocha comes out of the dugout to take Little out. He pitched to one batter and brought in Marv Grissom, who was a journeyman right-handed relief pitcher. And he was going to pitch to the next batter, whoever that was, I don't recall. And Grissom came to the mound, and Little handed him the ball, and he said, "I got my man." Thanks to the greatest catcher.
That's a great story. Hal.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
So,
well, anybody who's seen that catch Mays made, I mean, it was just incredible. It had to take a lot of the wind out of the sails of the Indians, because here a guy like Wirtz hits that shot, and it's 400 and some feet. You know, Willie goes back and makes the catch and spins around and throws the ball in and prevents another runner from moving up. So, I mean, it was just an incredible play. And Hal, what you said about Willie, I guess, you know, when you look at it, it is like a wide receiver catching a ball over his shoulder. That's what he did. But on the other hand, he had that great speed that he could do that. I mean,
right.
A lot of outfielders, they wouldn't have been able to get to the ball.
Yeah, well,
but
in that first game,
plus a baseball is a hell of a lot smaller than a football.
Yeah. Willie Mays Wirtz hits the ball 450 feet, and it's an out. He was the only Indian that did any hitting at all in that series. He was 8 for 16. So anyway, Dusty Rhodes gets up there in the 10th inning. There's a pinch hitter, and he hits the ball to the first row in right field, 258 feet.
Right.
Any other place but the Polo Grounds, the result of that is different. And the Indians were just totally psyched out by that one.
Bobby Avila, who was the second baseman on that Cleveland team, when Dusty Rhodes hit that ball, Avila started to go back because he thought it was a pop-up, which it really was, a pop-up. And 25 years later, Bob Lemon was managing the Yankees, and he would come into the press room after games because he could drink for free. You know, there was no charge. And he would come in and he'd weave stories, and it was wonderful just to sit with him at a table for a half hour or so. And he would, but the one story that he was still angry 25 years later, he was still angry about Dusty Rhodes beating him with a little pop fly home run. What they called a Chinese homer in those days.
Yeah, no, it was, Hal. I mean, I watched it on television. I didn't have the luxury maybe being there at the Polo Grounds, but I remember seeing it. And you're right. I mean, Vila at second base goes running out, and here, it just makes the, I think it was, 257 or 258 right down the line?
Yeah.
I mean, just crazy. And, in any other ballpark in America, that would have been just an easy fly out, that what they call a can of corn. And when they're playing at the Polo Grounds, all of a sudden, Dusty Rhodes, beats them with that pop-up home run, and Wirtz, hits one 450 feet, and it's nothing but a fly out.
I have a question for you guys on Dusty's home run. What was the exit velocity on that?
Oh God, yeah, and the launch angle.
I'm glad you brought that up. Let's research that one.
Yeah.
Let's see.
We should look that up, right? The exit velocity for that home run.
Well, they've got it on
film. If they
film.
had exit velocities for Mickey Mantle, I mean, we'd still be talking about half of them.
Well, they've got it on film. They could certainly figure it out. It's not.
But who cares?
With an algorithm.
I know who
with
cares.
An algorithm
of course.
here and a spreadsheet there. Why
it's awful. It's awful. Yeah, I just, my eyes glaze over when they start talking about those.
Oh, by the way, I saw
training.
Sabre is having their analytics conference out in Phoenix, and I took a look at the topics for this, and I wouldn't last more than 5 minutes in any of them.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think any of you guys would either.
I just saw something on Facebook, I think it was yesterday, a guy extolling the virtues of war or whatever they call that. Oh, God, yeah. First of all, I have no idea what he's even talking about. And I guess because we're all old guys, that it just escaped us. But the fact is that, the new analytics, they live and die by this war. And I have no idea why, what it is or why they talk about it, but they make a big issue out of it. And it was a whole big thing yesterday. I think it was on Facebook about war.
My favorite one is the spin rate of the pitch.
That's a good one.
I mean, God, it just, I tell you, it just almost makes me want to not watch baseball.
And all the teams have these big analytic departments.
Yes, they do.
And
we have spent a lot of time. A couple of weeks ago, we spent a lot of time talking about the Astros and the sign stealing saga that they went through. Well, now they're going through spring training, and this is the beginning of a very ugly season for them, because they're getting hit by pitchers left and right. And it's not funny. I mean, somebody's going to get hurt.
You know, Hal, that's what I was going to suggest we talk about this evening. Because yes, you're right, and the season hasn't even really started yet, of course. And
no, we're 3
I
weeks
just
away.
wonder. Yeah, and I just wonder. To me, that it's not a good thing. I mean, I know the Astros did a terrible thing for themselves and for the game, but I don't think it's up to the other players to start beaning them. I
think players are angry because the Astro players were not punished. They paid no price for any of this. They got their rings, they got their World Series shares, they're moved on. And I think the rest of baseball, the rest of the players, certainly the players who were victimized, the players on the Dodgers and the players on the Yankees, are angry, are flat out angry. They feel that they were cheated, and they were.
The union will fight that tooth and nail.
Well, I know.
Tooth and nail for the money or anything involving money or suspensions. The union would fight it tooth and nail.
Oh, sure.
Hal, you made a point. You made a point the other day. You called it frontier justice, and I think that's exactly what it is when it comes to pitchers. I mean, they're not trying to maim the batters, but if you'll notice, though, at least the clips I saw, they're hitting them in the back or they're hitting them somewhere on their body. They're not throwing at their head or they're not throwing behind them, which is what batters hate. I mean, for any pitcher, if he throws a ball behind the hitter, he's going to get a look. And sometimes the hitters are going to charge the mound because that's a no-no. So I think what's happening now, and it'll probably be something you're going to see the rest of the season. When they get into the regular season, I think you're going to see pitchers, they're going to be hitting, and then what's an umpire do is he start ejecting pitchers for throwing at the hitters, and then the managers come out and they get a big brouhaha about the whole thing. I mean, I agree with you, Hal, and David and Alan. I think it's going to get real ugly when they get into the season, especially if the Astros are playing somebody that's involved in the pennant race. They're going to let them know that they're not happy with what had happened a year ago.
The over-under is 87 hit by pitchers on the Astros. Las Vegas set a line on this already.
All right. There's another part of this, too. The Astros play in the American League, although I've never gotten around. I've never accepted that. To me, the Astros were a National League team. But all right, they put them in the American League. And the American League, they have the designated hitter. That means the pitcher never comes to the plate. So if he throws at batters, he doesn't have to face retaliation.
Right. And
that's significant, I think, He's protected.
Except that he gets thrown out. Except that he gets thrown out of the game.
Well, yeah, fine, get thrown out. So he gets thrown out, get an early shower.
Well, that's always been a thing, the retaliation. I mean, that's why umpires have always been after pitchers. I mean, the players will say, hey, you got to protect your own. And, if somebody gets hit, the next time that team is on the field, up at bat, one of them is going to go down. That's part of the,
that's
the unwritten
laws
and rules
we used to have
of baseball.
that in government,
Right. Yep.
We don't have that
let's not get into that.
No, we're not going to get into that.
Yeah.
We're not going to get into that.
Oh, God,
but the other thing, George, you were mentioning about throwing behind the batter. The natural tendency, I'm told, and I don't know firsthand, But I'm told that the natural tendency when a pitch comes inside or it looks like it's going to hit you is to back away. So if the pitch is being thrown behind you, you're liable to back into the pitch.
Yeah, that's one thing. You're absolutely right, Hal. Hitters hate that. And, if they're going to go down, they can sort of expect it if it's going to come at their body or something. But if you're throwing behind them, and you're right, the natural tendency is to move back, you're going to get yourself right into a pitch.
Well, that happened here in New York. Roger Clemens, I don't know if you're familiar with him. He once was a candidate for the Hall of Fame. He beaned Mike Piazza, who was the best hitter on the Mets team. Right. And then during the World Series, Piazza broke his bat, and the part of the bat rolled out to the mound, and Clemens picked it up and threw it at him. Now, there are people who will tell you that that's a signal of that was a sign of steroid rage, that Clemens might have been high as a kite at the time. I would never accuse Roger Clemens of using steroids, not much. but
well, he said he didn't, so obviously he was okay, no problem.
Yeah, well, that's true. The next season, he came to bat at Shea Stadium, and the Mets had a pitcher, and I can't remember his name, not very good. But the first time Clemens came to the plate, boy, they threw at him. There was no question that they were going to do it, and they did it. And that was that version in those days of frontier justice.
Right.
But now, with the American League pitchers protected, Clemens, that happened to be an interleague game, so he had to come to the plate. But by and large, American League pitchers don't come to the plate. So it's going to be an interesting season. Let's put it that way. But they all are, aren't they?
Yeah,
that's true.
One way or another, yeah. But
when it comes to pitching and hitters and all that kind of stuff, I don't want to belabor this, but I can tell you for a fact that managers will tell a pitcher, "Hey, I want him going down," or whatever. They'll let him know, and it will be a time when an umpire, he's going to have that call, and he's going to say, "Hey, you threw at that guy, and you're out of the game." And that's part of baseball, and that's where I think there's going to be arguments. There's going to be all kinds of problems because there will be players that are being thrown at, and I'm with you guys as far as it's frontier justice. That's what you do. You protect your team, and
well,
you also send a message out there, Hal. What you're saying, you send a message saying, "Hey, I'm not happy with what you guys did, so here's the way I show it." And I'm going to throw the ball at you. And these major league pitchers, they'll say, "Oh, the pitch got away from me." That's BS. The pitch doesn't get away from them. You want to hit somebody, you'll hit them. That's how good they are. You just talk about pitchers, they paint the corners.
That's why they're in the major leagues.
They have so much control. They can throw that ball. They can do all kinds of stuff with it. For them to say, "Oh, it slipped," or the ball came out of my hand the wrong way, that's BS. It's not. They're doing it as part of what they're saying is that, hey, you hurt us, we're going to hurt you.
There's a pitcher on the Reds now.
Here in New York. There was a great rivalry here in New York between the Giants and the Dodgers, and it was made even stronger when Leo DeRocher, the manager of the Dodgers, suddenly showed up as manager of the Giants. And DeRocher and the Dodgers didn't quite get along, and he ordered pitchers to throw at the Dodger hitters. And one of the hitters that he ordered thrown at was a guy named Carl Furillo, a right fielder. And Furillo was leading the league in hitting one year, and he was convinced that DeRocher had thrown at him, had ordered a pitcher to throw at him. And one thing led to another, and suddenly Furillo charged the Giants' dugout. And there was a fracas, as you can imagine, and Furillo came out of it with a broken finger that cost him the season and the batting title.
So he won the batting title that year. But he almost lost it to Red Shadings, but he held on. Yeah.
But it cost him a bunch of games at the end of the season.
Oh, yeah.
And that's significant. That stuff is important, That's where they make their money, or they made their money in those days. So throwing a bat is not exactly new. It's been around for a long, long time, but I think it's going to be more than ever when you consider what went on in this off season with the sign stealing saga.
So DeRocher had a number of pitchers, specifically with the Giants. I think two of them were Larry Jensen and Jim Hearn, who would not throw at batters.
Well, that
Magley more than made up for it, of
Magley,
course,
but that wasn't the case with Sal Magley, was it?
No, he more than made up for it. Yeah.
Yeah, he gave him a close shave, is what he did, right?
He sure did.
George, a little bit off topic. I thought of you and your dad when Gil Cohn passed away a few weeks ago.
Yeah, he did, and I had met Gil at a Washington Senators reunion. Really nice guy, and I did see that he passed away. And my dad and Gil, I've got a picture on my office wall of my dad being congratulated by Eisenhower with Gil Cohn looking on. I mean, my dad and Gil had a nice relationship over the years, and I was sad to see it. And actually, Alan, as you're talking about now, I mean, there's very few players from that era that are still,
I know,
working.
Yeah.
And where we started the conversation tonight was an example. I mean, Antonelli was a couple of years later, but I think he broke into major leagues in
1940. Yeah, a cup of coffee in 1948.
Right. My dad retired in 47,
so
they were
year,
just 1 year apart. So. And the same with Jackie Robinson. I think I told you I met Jackie's daughter, looked just like him, and Jackie broke in 47, the year my dad retired. So, baseball is a small world. I've met a lot of people over the years who played with or against my dad, who remember my father, but today there's very few of those players that are.
Yeah, basically, the other day I just was looking at the list of the 52 tops, the players of the 52 top set, and I think there's 15 of them. There are 407 cards in that set. I think there are 15 that are still alive, and the only one's not in the 90s are Del Crandall, Vernon Law, and Dick Rowe, all of whom are going to hit 90 this year.
Right. Well, it is. It's one of those things. I just before we got on tonight, I was just watching something. They were doing a clip of when the Nationals honored Frank Howard, and Frank Howard was a great home run hitter, terrific Washington ball player. But when you see him now, I mean, he's infirmed. He's not doing well at all. He's in a wheelchair and that kind of stuff. It really makes it sad. And I think we talked earlier about, like old timers games. A lot of the old timers, they preferred not to even, play because they didn't want the fans to think of them as an old feeble man. We talked about DiMaggio. I mean, he would stand up at the, in a suit, and he'd wave to the fans. And I think somebody talked about Whitey Ford a couple of weeks ago that he would just get to the top of the dugout steps and wave, and that was basically it. So
30 years ago, they had this thing called the Cracker Jacks.
Right.
And they used to tour, and 30 years ago, 1987, we had the Sabre National in Washington, and since there was no ball club there, and the Orioles were on the road, they took us to a Cracker Jack game in RFK Stadium, and it was very sad. You got these guys who were like 50, and you remember seeing at their peak, watching them try to move around like they're as 50-year-olds.
Right.
I was sad.
It was very sad to see that.
I was on the field for that.
The sense of having a game, making them play a game. It was it's foolish. Have them come out, take a bow, thank you very much, and that's the end of it. But why do they have to play a game?
The Yankees now invite guys you never heard of who are substitutes on a couple of championship teams who hardly ever played because they can't find enough people to play a 2 or 3 inning game.
Well, and now they play a 2-inning game. They used to play 3 innings. They used to play 3 at Yankee Stadium because I used to go all the time. But the last time I went to the new ballpark, about 2 years ago now, they only played a 2-inning game.
But
And,
still,
yeah,
they can't get the.
No.
They get the third string shortstops, and these types. They didn't buy them back. Nobody.
Mm-hmm.
Most people have forgotten who the heck they were, and they get them specifically to play these old timers games.
Well, we have to reorganize baseball. That's all there is to it, guys, and we're working on it every week. But so far, we haven't made a lot of progress. We try.
I don't know how they don't listen to us. What's the matter?
Oh, yeah.
They don't listen. If they would listen to us, it'd be a better game. It was a better game.
Right.
Anyway, it's been fun. I like it every week, and we'll do it again next week, guys.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Hello?
The proceeding has been a Comfortably Zoned network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.